As we return to Appalling Twistianity here in the Rainbow Studio of the YAHOWAH blog, we left our last program, our last episode, discussing the identity of the individual and the qualifications of the individual who would be bringing this disquieting news to Christians to let them know that the author of their New Testament, the man who wrote the first 14 letters of the New Testament and who deliberately brought Mark and Luke into his posse for the express purpose of those two Gospels and the book of Acts, and therefore the man who created Christianity, because all of those books were written before any other, was a complete fraud. And you're entitled to know the credentials of the man who was able to determine this in the 5 volumes of Twistianity, because God had a lot to say about him through the prophets. And the earliest declaration of him was likely scribed by Moshe, as he and Dode are both mentioned by very descriptive titles or names in the Torah. But then we find Dode writing the 14th Mizmor, which is a word picture, introducing the concept of a choter. And he is telling us that this choter is going to be a rather exceptional individual. And in particular, he is going to be Chokmah. And Chokmah may be Dode's most descriptive attribute, most important attribute, and something that is quite unique about this individual and something he shares with Dode. Since choter means secondary stem of a main branch, Dode being the main branch, since choter speaks of a sucker that gives productivity to a stump so that it can be fruitful and productive again. It is germane to know that last time I checked, sticks, twigs, suckers, shoots, and branches do not have the capacity for a spirit, nor the capacity for intelligence or understanding, or being a gabor, which is to be bold, but people do. And last time I checked, a branch or stem was incapable of writing a sign, and that is what's attributed to this choter. So it might be appropriate to, as we recommence in this text, to recognize that we really have one of 3 options as we move through this material, because this isn't a happenstance. The entire 11th chapter of the boldest of the prophets, Yeshaya, is devoted to a man with the 7 spirits of Yahowah, who is called the choter. And this is the same title that Dode, 300 years earlier, the king and Messiah, our Savior, wrote about, devoting the entire 14th mashal, proverb, or word picture to this same individual. And this means that you, as a listener, have a choice. You can say that God inspired Dode and then Yeshaya to write of someone that was evidently supposed to be uncommonly intelligent and bold, who would play a major role in the last days in bringing his people home, but that such a person really never exists. That there was nothing God actually was going to do to change the wayward nature of his people. That after 2,500 years of not finding anyone that would listen to him, God was just going to let the bad times roll. And who cares if anybody actually attended the Shabuah harvest or the Towrah ingathering or had a clue as to who the Adamah Parah, this productive bull, and his sacrifice was going to accomplish. Who cares if there was anybody there to welcome Dode back as the king? So that's one option, is that when God inspired his beloved son Dode to speak of the Choder, and then the most prolific of the prophets, Yeshayah, to address him, also in a full chapter devoted both times to him, that he was just kidding. There really isn't such a person. God was just going to let the fact that there was no one who knew him and therefore would attend the last four Mikre play out as it would be, and he was just going to destroy the earth when he's all done. That's one of your options. Another option is to recognize that the person who is bringing this to your attention and who is mentioned in perhaps as many as 1,000 other references similar to this by different names and titles, is the very person that this discuss. And that the guy that reintroduced Yahweh's name to his people wrote 35 books under the title Yada Yahowah, and who is the one who determined that Dode really is our Savior, who has returned as he had attested to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, and the one who is the first to assess the 5 conditions of the covenant and the intent of each of the 7 Moed Mikre, as well as develop an accurate timeline of God's plans, that he is that guy. Seems rather obvious, so that's one of your options, and then you can listen and see what he has to say that is a benefit to you. The third is that, well, this is talking about somebody else. And if it's somebody else, then let's hope that that individual also has reintroduced Yahweh's name, that has written a bunch of books based upon their translations, stripping the text of the Masoretic diacritical markings and returning to the oldest witness of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and has done so in an amplified manner so that you can validate the translations and verify them as being accurate, and that has also come up with 1,000, maybe 10,000 insights that are pertinent to forming a relationship with Yahweh. Perhaps there is somebody out there like that. And if there is, I am not certain he would say anything different than I'm saying to you. And if there is, why don't we know of him? But those are your 3 options. You can choose whichever you want. But this is what God said of this individual: a choder, a shoot, a secondary branch, and a sucker from the fallen stump. Wah, choder, a stem or smaller branch that is a secondary source of growth, will be extended for a limited time. Yatzah, the term for extended, is the same word that God used for the Exodus, Yatzah, will be extended to draw out for a limited time. Now, if this person is being extended, and we're reading this in the text of Yeshayah, who do you think it is that is extending him?
Yahweh. That would be Yahweh.
That would be a good answer. By means of the stalk, the giza, the stump, the root from which new growth can emerge, of standing out and being noticed. The very fundamental nature of not only of Yahweh, but of those he chooses to work through, is that they are not meek. They are not passive. They stand out and they are noticed. They draw attention, not to themselves, but to the substance of our existence. It also implies, since this word is Yiche, and that was the name of Dod's father, that this individual is being extended from the stock of what made Dod. The fact that he is God's son, the fact that he is God's anointed one, since he is God's prophet, since he is the one that God approved to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Makotim, since he is the returning king. It says, then this will be a shoot from him. And as an observant branch, Netzir, a secondary stem. Why is this person being extended as a observant branch, as a Netzir? Well, because Dod is the Shamak. He is the main branch. He is the branch off the tree of lives. And this individual, as an observant branch, draws your attention to all that Dod, David, represents. By means of his roots and that which keeps him anchored, steadfast, and nourished. God uses horticultural metaphors because they're easy for our minds to grasp. Roots keep a tree anchored. They keep it sound and solid, even in rains and storms, high winds and earthquakes, and you name it. Sound roots make a difference. And God wants his spokesperson to be nourished, to be nourishing, to bear fruit. You can't do these things without solid and productive roots, such that he will continually bear an abundance of fruit, being productive while encouraging productivity in others. He will be para. Have you familiar with a para? For those who are listening to this, are there mentions elsewhere of a para?
Well, yes.
Yes. Well, how about in Yashaya in the 17th chapter, after designating the last of the three Zeroah as the individual who is the one who cultivates and is productive for the specific harvest of Shabua and then Teruah, doesn't he refer to that individual as a para?
Is he referring to the choder as a para?
And here, is he not referring to the choder as a para?
Yeah.
So when you look for a para elsewhere in God's story, you're drawn to the 19th chapter of the book of Numbers. And that para is designated as an Adamah para. Adamah means that he is bloody, he is a man, and he is of the earth. Para is a productive bull. And you say, no, it can't be because Adamah and para are both feminine. Para means productive. Par means bull. It's a productive bull. And Yahweh uses masculine and feminine terms to describe those who serve with him. It is his custom to do so. And there are qualities of this bull that make it appropriate to use the ending. For example, he is productive.
Yeah.
Now, you can have a bull that's productive, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you want a bull that's
You do. You do. You don't want to castrate your bull. You want your bull to be productive. Para is a productive bull. And so the choder is productive. The choder is a stem off the main branch that has been extended by Yahweh, that is nourished by the very roots of what it means to be Yisrael and Yahudah and to be Dod, who is exceedingly productive, while being a touch bullish. Means he's got horns.
It's singular, right?
Part.
It's singular. It's
well,
a
it is.
not,
Well, the Towrah is singular. The whole discussion here is singular. There's only one person this applies to, all the way through. It is always a singular concept. And when Dod presents it in his own words in the 14th Mashal, Towrah is singular, all the way through. That's Yeshaya 11:1, and that's profound. And you would think that with something that profound, the world would be looking for that individual. Evidently not. This is because the Spirit, the Ruach of Yahowah, will settle and remain on him. This is the only time that is stated. The Yahowah will describe his Spirit coming on certain individuals, such as Moshe. Actually, he doesn't tell us that the Spirit came on Moshe. He just says that when Moshe had his meltdown, that he's going to divide the Spirit that he had given to Moshe among 70 others. The Spirit came upon Eldod and Midod, so that they could prophesy when it became obvious that Moshe was looking for help and couldn't stand being around the Israelites any longer. The Spirit of Yahweh is the thing that makes Dod anointed. Spirit of Yahweh, well, it's not called the Spirit of Yahweh, but the Spirit, obviously from Yahweh, came upon Dod when he was 8 years old, never left him. But in all of those instances, it's just the Ruach. It very even seldom is it even the Ruach Kodesh, which would be the Ruach described as being set apart from Yahweh, a part of Yahweh set apart from him. But in this case, it is the Ruach of Yahweh. That makes this Towrah unlike any other that has ever lived. And when Yahweh says that he's going to raise up the nesh, this sign, this banner, that the Towrah is responsible for writing, it's something that has not previously occurred, and it's presented as something that's going to occur in the last days. That means that this Towrah is someone who is going to emerge at the time he still has the opportunity to be productive, which would mean before the Shabuah harvest, before the Teruah harvest, and before he is called on as the Parah to fulfill the second day of Teruah. But he has the Spirit of Yahweh. That is Nuach. Nuach doesn't mean that he tangentially related. There's a reference to Daniel, who is a bit of a scallywag. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed by a long shot. And he references a spirit. But in the reference, it says, using Aramaic and Aramaic stems, that this spirit, while available, did not have any attachment to Daniel. But in this case, we're seeing just the opposite. The Spirit of Yahweh, Nuach, that means was placed upon, energized, restored, formed an alliance with, used him as a home, and remained. So the Spirit of Yahweh is at home within the Towrah. The Towrah is the abode at this moment for the Ruach of Yahweh. So if you're looking for somebody who is the Towrah, that person would have to know that the Spirit of Yahweh was using him as the abode of the Spirit, enriching the association. Now, if there's anybody else out there, please shoot me their email. I'd like to know them. God doesn't say that there's two of them, though, or three of them, or four of them, or a feminine variation of them, or one maybe that works as a chef someplace in Europe. Nope. He says there's one of them. But there are 7 spirits that are associated with this individual. The first is the Spirit of Yahowah. The second is the Spirit providing the capacity for intelligence, for comprehension, for mental aptitude, for wisdom, for the technical expertise to do what is required to process information such that insights can be derived. Chakma. So, Spirit of Yahowah, the Spirit of Chakma. This individual can't be a dunderhead. This individual is going to have a fairly significant vocabulary. Sign of intelligence is quite often found in writing. They will have written numerous books. They will feel comfortable speaking extemporaneously to people. They will obviously have many, many unheralded insights that are derived as a result of not only their intelligence, but the material that they're studying. Somebody with the Spirit of Yahowah and the Spirit of Chakma is going to reveal things that have not previously been known and reveal enormous quantities of profound insights previously unheralded. And the Spirit of enabling understanding by making the connections to reveal these insights. Bena. Bena is from Bien. It is perhaps my favorite of all Hebrew words. I like Yada, knowing. I like Yada knowing to such an extent that I thought I was the one that was clever and chose Yada as my nom de plume and as an anonymous ploy to be used by Yahowah can anonymously in writing these books. And I was Yada for the first 10 years I did this until, well, then we find that most of the time that Yahowah was introducing this fellow, he refers to him as Yada. And he actually refers to the books that we have collaborated on together and calls them Yada Yahowah. So I thought it was really clever in choosing this until you find that, well, no, Yahowah chose it many, many years prior. It's okay. He's smarter than I am, much older than I am too. So it's not surprised that he came up with it earlier. But the reason I like Bena is that, and Bien, is that what it speaks of making the connections to understand. It's my favorite thing. It's knowing is great. It's so much better than believing. Somebody asked me, what do you believe? I said, nothing. I either know or I don't know. Knowing is wonderful. I've spent the last 24 years, every waking hour, attempting to know more than I knew the previous day about God. And knowing is exceedingly comforting. It's reassuring. It's its own treat. But there is something, I think, infinitely more powerful than knowing. And that's understanding. Yeah. You can, as somebody who knows, you could sit behind this microphone and you could rattle on things that you know, but you couldn't say anything that would help anybody go beyond knowing. It is when you do what we did here at the beginning. We talked about Torah. We noticed that Torah is used in Isaiah 17, speaking of the person who is productive in coordinating the harvests of Shabat and Towrah, and that the Torah is the one who is sacrificed as part of Numbers 19 considered as the red heifer on behalf of the adulterous woman of Numbers 5, but also consistent with what Eliah has done when there was the sacrifice of the bull, as he was repudiating the religiosity and politics of Israel 2,888 years before he will be asked to do the same thing and serve as the master of ceremonies over the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah during Towrah. And so it is by making these connections that you, as a listener or a reader, can go from knowing that there is an Adamah Parah to knowing who the Adamah Parah is, to knowing what Yahweh is going to do with that Adamah Parah so that he can return with his beloved son on Yom Kippurim and then conduct the intended wedding and reconcile the relationship with his people. That is the value of Binah. So Chokmah is what helps you process the information quickly with a fast processor, if you will. And then Binah is what then happens to make the connections, to find the common denominators, if you will, so that you can go beyond knowing to understanding, which I would say that apart just from Yahweh's spirit alone, the Ruach of Yahweh, understanding is the most powerful force in the universe. Intelligence is also powerful, but it not nearly as powerful as understanding. The next spirit is the spirit of advice and counsel. It is written here as Etzah. It is more than just the ability to do what we're doing here, which is to share these insights related to Yahweh. Etzah is the ability to see how the entire picture comes together, to properly frame it, and then put all of the pieces of this puzzle that form this portrait that God is painting of himself and of us and our relationship together in such a way that all of the details, all of the shadings, the colors, the insights that can be gleaned from it are seen from the proper perspective. And that we're looking at God's story correctly from beginning to end, so that the entire story for the first time can be told from beginning to end. You know, what is it about the creation account that applies to us today? Well, how about the fact that God spoke it into existence, which means that words were the operative force, and that it is the words of God that form the Torah and prophets, and they are the operating force within our lives. How about the insight that the second day is all about Asher? It's relative and relationships that are constantly being reinforced, and that time is relative to the observer, and that therefore we can correlate creation time with human time on this planet and realize that 14 to 15 billion years in terms of universal gestation and 6 24-hour days are exactly the same length of time based upon the relative nature of time based upon the observer. Or how about we get to the fourth day of creation, where God speaks of a greater and lesser luminary. Doesn't say he created them on the fourth day. They would have existed long before plant life was conceived on the third day. It just says that they became visible as signs of the moed, of the fulfillment of these 7 annual events that God has invited us to attend for our benefit throughout the year: Pesach, Matzah, Bakodim, Shabuah, Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. And he talks about the relationship at great length between the lesser and the greater luminary. And what he is saying essentially is that Dod as the sun, and God explains that Dod is returning as the sun, that the sun's light is reflected by the lesser luminary, the moon. And he also explains in the 89th Mizmor that the moon will be forever attributed to this realization of who the sun is as the greater luminary, and will always reflect the sun's brilliance. And that these two individuals are the same two individuals that are woven throughout the entire fabric of the Torah and prophets to help God's people and Goyim, people the world over, have an appreciation for the enlightenment that God is offering. Or the fact that the story of man starts in the garden, and Sukkah's purpose is to bring us back into that garden, and that after being booted out of the garden 6,000 years ago, at the conclusion of year 6,000 Yah was inviting us right back into that garden. That is seeing the entire picture from beginning to end. These are the kinds of things that Etzah addresses. And heretofore, no one had ever conveyed any of this in a way that you could see the entire picture framed, or all of the pieces of the puzzle put in the proper place, or even perceive God's story properly from beginning to end, with the person presenting a timeline to you going back in time all the way to the period forward in time when Shabuah, Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah are fulfilled. And also a spirit of being emboldened and inspiring. You know, God chose a bullish personality for a reason in this particular case. He chose a ram for his son, and also the image of a roaring lion of Judah. You got to be bold if you're going to do this. The number of people who will even take your own insights, your own translations, transliterations, and then twist those things such that they attack you with them are many. Those who will attack you and condemn you because you are horrible for the religious and political business are many. You know, you go on X or Facebook as me, it's a tough journey. And you better be bold. You better be strong. You better be courageous, or this job can't be done. I'll just go back to the Exodus. The children of Israel were so belligerent and antagonistic to God. They told God to go away, to shut up. They never wanted to hear from him or see him again. Now, if you're dealing with people that obnoxious, that dunderhead in their approach, irascible, how are you going to prevail with them if you are not tough as nails, if you are not empowered and able to accomplish this mission? And if I may, Moshe, strong dude, man. Moshe had character. He stood up for the children of Israel in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. He stood up for the women at the well when the bandits came to rob them. We know that Moshe had character. And yet, we're not even 3 days out of Choreb. Well, even in Choreb, he broke the first set of tablets. He was so pissed off at his brother and the children of Israel. And for the golden calf episode, them being religious, 3 days out of Choreb, he's coming to God and said, why would you do this to me? You have me doing a job that nobody can do. These people are impossible. I want nothing to do with them. If you have any compassion for me, you're just going to kill me. So I would say, how is it then possible that somebody is going to prevail where Yahweh didn't and Moshe didn't? And we'll go one step further. Dowd won 66 battles defending Yisrael from those who on the outside were trying to destroy Yisrael. He even took down the giant that was attacking Yisrael with a single stone. But when his own people rebelled against him, starting with his own son, that was too much. He left Jerusalem. He couldn't deal with you either. So you damn well better be bold. This idea that the meek are going to inherit the earth. No, they're not. No. God's spirit is that of Gabor. It says right here, strong, courageous, empowered, able to accomplish the mission, perform the task till it's complete, not going to give up, unwavering. A character of a champion, somebody who's going to say, I am here. I don't care what you say about me. If you're going to be the one who writes muck today, well, then goody for you. You won't be the first. You won't be the last. But I will tell you, you will be left. The spirit of knowing and knowledge, da'ath. You can't apply the chakma intelligence without information. You can't make the connections to go from knowing to understanding without information. To be bold without a cause is counterproductive. You're wasting your time. You got to have the foundation that is information. It is knowledge. And you got to particularly know where you apply these spiritual gifts that are given to this one unique individual, this Towrah. And that is the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. That is where you go to know. I was having a conversation earlier today with Rich, who was the captain of the cables here for us. You probably heard his voice a couple of times during this program. And I looked to him when we're having a discussion. He's a lot friendlier than the camera that is tucked behind the teleprompter. So we were just saying that there is so many things that throughout this experience that I have deduced without having been explicitly told. And the examples that we were using is that once Yeshayah said the last Zeroah, cultivating the harvest, is in fact the parah. And then we read this and translated and explained the story of the Adamah parah and how the Adamah parah purges the adulterous woman, Numbers 19, Numbers 5, and that this was all done previously from our perspective, after it from the Torah's perspective, by Eliah, who is the one person Yahweh is bringing back. And you say, wow, he is bringing him back because he exposed and condemned the religious and political establishment and was the one person already rehearsed as a master of ceremony over the sacrifice of a bull. And so you say, all right, that's pretty cool to make all those connections and bring all of that together. But then there's some things that would make sense, that this sacrifice of the Adamah parah takes place on Towrah, and that it takes place on the Temple Mount, and that takes place 10 days before Dod's arrives. And it has to therefore be Hasatan that's going to do the deed of taking the bull's life. And that bull then is going to be put into the altar on the east side of a restored tent of the witness that is on a Temple Mount that is no longer featuring the scars of Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, and that it will face the Mount of Olives as a by design, which would be the stadium seats, and that that bull is going to be ignited, the flames, by Yahweh, and it's going to be showered in water so that it can cleanse all of those around, which means that Yahweh is going to release those showers of waters. And all while Eliah serves as the master of ceremonies. Now, that's a lot to deduce from the clues we were given. And yet I shared all of it with you. And now we're in Daniel, going back into it again because I wanted to hone the timeline to make certain that we had everything right as it is presented. And we have the corporeal manifestation of Ha-Satan killing the Parah. And we have the fires being ignited. And his actual body is called a shower of water in the Aramaic text. And that all of this is being presented at a time and place that you could only conclude is the Temple Mount. And you just find one affirmation after another, that this is exactly how this is going to transpire. And you find that Solomon's speech regarding the Nakri, God's observant foreigner, which everybody that's ever studied the Torah and prophets knows, that there is a whole series of prophecies regarding a person that's referred to as the Nakar and the Nakri, this observant foreigner. And that speech was delivered on Towrah. And it's Yashaya that tells us that the sacrifice of the Parah is on Towrah. This is how you take knowledge and you process it through the Spirit of Yahweh so that you have intelligent deductions, rational, logical connections and conclusions so that you can see the entire picture and then have the courage, and it is courage, to lay it all on the line. And life for me here, I live on a beautiful island. I have a beautiful wife and a wonderful family and this home here. And I came in a sleek airplane and a beautiful boat. I didn't need this. I could have, I had a fine old time cruising around the islands. And with every one of the 1,000 insights that I have shared, I make myself vulnerable. Another idiot can go and try to pick that and try to find something that they can quote mine from some other place to say, well, it can't be true. Thousands and thousands of insights that I have written and shared with you, conveying the spirit of knowing and knowledge. And you better have thick skin if you're going to do it, because there's a lot of naysayers out there that are exceedingly jealous, have miserable lives, and are looking for something that they can do to tear others down to make them feel good by comparison. So it is a tough damn job. This last spirit is the spirit of Yira. Yira is a word also that I was unique on. It is almost always translated as fear, of terror. And so this would be saying that Yahweh gave the Towrah the spirit of fear, of fright, of terror. And what I learned really very early on is that Yara and Yare can mean either that, fear, terror, anguish, or it can mean to respect and revere, to view as awesome and be inspired by, and that the context determines which of those apply. And when it's applied to the spirit of Yahweh, it would be reverence and respect. And so what he's saying here, this person has the spirit such that they will revere and respect Yahweh, not fear Yahweh. You can't do this job if you're afraid of your boss. If you're afraid of your boss, you aren't going to write anything. You're not going to publish anything. You're not going to say anything for fear of being wrong and being chastised for it. But if you respect him, if you revere him, if you see his awesome nature and character, his astonishing greatness, you're going to be motivated to put your neck out on the chopping block every single day for him. That you will devote every last ounce of energy you have, motivated not by fear, but by respect. We don't want to disappoint God. We want him to be, as to the extent possible, pleased with us as we are with him. We're here doing this because of our reverence and respect for Yahweh. This is Yeshaya 11:2. Additionally, by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he will be perceptive. Perceptiveness is the ability to have a nose for the truth. It's uncanny, but I can look at posts in social media. I can look at theories that are presented to me and almost always deduce immediately true or false, beneficial or counterproductive. Just reasonably perceptive. I've always been that way. I'm very judgmental and have this ability to determine what is right and wrong, appropriate or counterproductive, to see the good or bad in things that are helpful or hurtful to humankind. And being exceedingly judgmental in this regard is the only reason I was able to write books like Twistianity and Goddamn Religion or Babel. And it worked the other way when writing about God and expressing his true nature. So additional, by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he will be perceptive. This does say a lot about free will, and that it is still possible for someone like this choder to tell God, no, go take a hike. What you're asking is way too much. It is, what you want to do here essentially is you want to take every waking moment for the last 32 years of my life. And then you want Satan to tear me apart and kill me in the end. And all along the way, you want me to go into hell and to be the foremost expert on Allah, Muhammad, and Islam. And then you want me to take on the most popular religion in the world, Christianity, and prove that Jesus never existed. That's what you're asking? Oh, sure. Sign me up. Well, actually, I did say, oh, sure, sign me up. It's with God, you have the opportunity to accept or decline the offer. I would tell you that he is reasonably persuasive, and there is no benefit of telling him no. And there's every benefit of telling him yes. So that he is going to be perceptive with regard to developing a profound admiration and respect for Yahweh. So we have essentially in this recap two things that have been affirmed. That even with the value of the spirit of Yahweh, the spirit of Chakma, of intelligence, the spirit of Binah, of understanding, the spirit of Gabora and strength, the spirit of Etzah, of being able to provide advice on the entire portrait that God is presenting, and the spirit of knowledge and respect, so that you know who to respect and where it serves as the foundation. God is doubling down on saying that with all of that, the thing that makes the biggest difference, the thing you want most to appreciate from this collaboration, is that this man is perceptive, and that by being discerning, he is going to develop and convey his admiration for Yahweh. And that's the intent of it all. That's why the books are called Yada Yahowah. That's why this is the YAHOWAH blog. It all comes down in the end to developing a respect for Yahweh, of doing the opposite of what Christianity, Islam, and Judaism have done. They've all written Yahweh out of their religion. And I have made Yahweh central to the relationship. Therefore, it will not be by an appearance or vision seen with the eyes that he will decide. And so he is saying that there are prophets who have been taken forward or back into time, and that by having them go back or forward into time, or just to have the vision of what happens previously or in the future revealed to them in their minds, they're in a position to write about what they have seen. That is a form of prophecy, either past or future. He's saying it's not going to be that way. Well, the reason it's not going to be that way is for the first 24 years of doing this, virtually everything that I perceived was deduced from the words that God had previously conveyed through his prophets. So I didn't need visions. I just studied his words. So it's very different. Now, that is not 100% true as we're going forward. I have seen now, for the first time, a vision of what things will be. I have not presented it as prophecy, and I have subsequently learned that everything that I had envisioned was conveyed previously through the prophets, which is the events around the return of the two witnesses and the celebration, if you will, of the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. So that's the one place where I have shared with you that I saw something in my mind of how this was going to play out. And it sort of was actually a trip into the future, and that I would read about everything that I saw over the next 12 months, actually 7 months, as I began to explore testimony I had not previously considered from the prophets. So our collaboration would be different in this regard. There was no Torah nor prophets for Moshe to read and to evaluate and to explain, although to a significant degree, Debatim is sort of what I have done with Yada Yahowah. He was given Barashith. He experienced Shemoth and Kara, and therefore he elaborated on it during Debatim. That's pretty similar to what we're doing, giving the written text and explaining it. And Dode, for the most part, spoke of things which were yet to come, and he only wrote a couple of odes to the Torah, but his odes to the Torah were quite brilliant. So Dode had to have been given insights that others had not seen so that he could write, for example, of his own crucifixion. So he says he will see that he will decide, Shafat, that he will confront the evidence and be judgmental, which is central to our relationship. Also, it will not be by hearsay what is heard with his ears. I'm not going to pass on to you what others have told me. I have avoided, like the plague, reading the analysis of others. You know, somebody will say, well, did you read so-and-so? Or this person has an interesting thing. No, I don't. I read the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And everything that I say about God is based upon the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. Hearsay means nothing to me. If somebody says, I had a dream, I'd like you to analyze my dream, I'll say, nope, I'm not going to do that for you. So, no, there is no hearsay involved here. So it will not be by hearsay heard from his ears that he will make judgments or prove his arguments. No, I prove all of my arguments based upon the Torah, the prophets, and the Psalms. It says he will exercise good judgment. He's going to be judgmental. He's going to be really, really judgy. It also says that he's going to be the one that's going to be adjudicating. So that, just as a suggestion out there, I mean, you can make your own call, but since there is nobody else that has ever fit this depiction, and this says that I'm going to be judgmental, I'm going to be the one that adjudicates these matters, you probably don't want to challenge what we're doing together. It's probably not in your best interest to say have 60 posts under Q and pound your chest using insights, transliterations, and translations that you have learned from me to say, no, I'm going to try to just piss you off. Maybe not the best call. So he will exercise good judgment. He's going to be very judgmental, make lots of decisions, adjudicate the matters, and resolve disputes by being someone who seeks to be accurate, honest, and forthright, being fair and correct. No one, I don't think, who has ever written books has gone back and spent as much time correcting the books when, in fact, we learn something new. So we have striven to be accurate, to be honest, to be forthright, and to say, this we know, this we don't know. And when we learn something new, something additional, we refine our understanding, we go back and we make those adjustments. So we have worked very hard to be Tzedek. In fact, everything related to Tzedek has been a celebration of this whole experience with YAHOWAH. It's how I was able to prove that that the Quran is not Tzedek, that the New Testament is not Tzedek, and that Dode was Tzedek. So Tzedek is the operative, defining, foundational term of our collaboration. I know what it means to be accurate, to be correct, to be forthright, to be vindicating. And I know how these things apply to Dode. I know how these things apply to YAHOWAH, and I know how YAHOWAH has had them apply to our collaboration together. With regard to opening the doorway for the discerning, in this particular case, YAHOWAH is giving the Towrah a little too much credit. It's kind of YAHOWAH's style, but it was Dode, his son, that opened the doorway. All I'm really doing is revealing to you that Dode opened the doorway by fulfilling Passover. So do you get an attaboy for saying, yes, Dode is the one who opened the doorway by fulfilling Passover. It is the doorway to life, and you ought to follow him through. Do you get an attaboy for being the first person to figure that out and to share it? Probably. Does it do Dode any good to have fulfilled Pesach if nobody knows about it? Not really. So, does this fit the idea of a greater and lesser luminary? Absolutely. It's the lesser luminary's job to reflect what the greater luminary has done. So it fits this, but it's Dode that that opened the doorway for the discerning. I just shot a light on it so that you would understand what God is offering through his son. It says he will provide proof using sound arguments. He is going to be a person who is evidence and reason driven. He is going to judge, be correct, and engage in dialogue that is both confirming and condemning, depending on what choice you make. So if you bring something that you have deduced from something that you've translated or I've translated, and I find it to be consistent with everything I've learned from God, I'm going to commend you for it. And if you say something that's counter to what I know that God has conveyed, I'm going to condemn you for it. And if you don't like that, then just stay away, I guess is the best answer, is just to stay away.
I'd rather be corrected than condemned.
I would rather be, yes, if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected.
Yes.
That's my my strong preference. And I think, well, we had this idiot today that went off the deep end, tearing off his shirt so that he could do videos on how on how big a nincompoop he is. And it was when I corrected him for something that he had said that evidently he didn't like being corrected. And I even did so nicely. But nonetheless, we digress. You need, in this doing this job, you're going to wield words wisely. You're going to offer proof and evidence and make conclusions based upon reason and logic. Then it says, with everything out in the open, doing so fairly. This is a unique aspect of my style. First of all, every book is offered in its entirety for free. You can't make things more out in the open than that. You can't make anything more out in the open than doing a live stream and doing 1 or 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours a day of a live stream. That's about as out in the open and vulnerable as you can possibly be. The very foundation of what I'm doing with Yahowah on your behalf, and God's conveying all this, not for me, but for you, because he wants you to know who this individual is, know how this individual has been equipped so that you can capitalize on what this individual has to say. That's the whole purpose of this. And the foundation of my books is an amplified translation style that I invented. And it is the first translation style that is not only open, but everything fairly presented, words up, if you will, on the top of the desk as you read these books, because I take the most generic form of every word and I present it within a parenthetical after a bold statement of what God has conveyed, such that you can copy and paste that word into any lexicon or Hebrew English dictionary to validate that the translation is true. It is the most open and honest way to go about it. Even if my translation is so radically different than everything you've been accustomed to before, I will explain my thought process and the etymological history of this word and its verbal actionable root, so that you would know how I came to that conclusion. And if there are nuances that are afforded by the volitional moods or the relational stems that convey an added meaning to the testimony and the narrative that's beyond what you can fit into the translation, we'll go there. We'll have this open and honest discussion all along the way. It is the thing that has caused thoughtful people to be drawn into the fellowship with Yahowah and the covenant as a result of these writings, because they are so open and honest. Everything on top of the table, cards face up. It says that this is all on behalf of the sincere who are seeking straightforward answers. This is from the Hebrew ana, which is another one of probably the 10 words that I'm most are best known for having analyzed correctly. And I've shared with you Yara versus how it's rendered versus my understanding of the word is a wonderful example of that. But ana is one of those as well. Ana is rendered in the context of Yahowah's invitations to meet with him as affliction, as debasement, of harming oneself. And yet the primary meaning of the word is to answer, to respond, to be receptive, to be someone who is willing to accept an offer after thoughtful deliberation, and their response becomes a word that they will stand behind. It is about constantly thinking, making declarations and providing a witness that is sincere. So that if God provides answers, we respond to them. This is anah. It is a marvelous word which is perfectly suited to be used by God in the context of his invitations to meet with him 7 times a year. And it says that these answers are for those in the land. Then it says, he will strike, verbally attacking and disabling. So the choder is not going to be a pussycat. He's like a bull. He's going to be on the attack. He's going to use his words to disable. He is going to confront. He will cripple. He will incapacitate. He will be sarcastic. He will mock. He will chastise. You don't like those things, you're not going to like him very much. But since God chose Eliah, who manifest all those things, since he chose Dode, who did the same thing, chances are you're not going to like God very much. So, good riddance. If you're looking for passive, you're looking in the wrong place. God says, I'm going to strike. I'm going to attack. That we're going to disable. We're going to confront. We're going to cripple. We're going to incapacitate. We're going to mock. We're going to chastise. We're going to be super judgy. But we're going to do so with words. We're not going to make ad hominem attacks. We're going to use evidence and reason to prevail. So then he will strike, verbally attacking and disabling, incapacitating, sarcastically mocking and chastising, being very judgy, pointing out the irony of things in the material realm. And he's going to do so with the rod and the staff of his mouth and with his voice. Pay. He's not going to be a violent man in the sense of wielding weapons of war. He's not going to pound his fists into your nose. He is going to try to strike some sense into you with words. His tools are going to be words, whether written or whether they are spoken, but he is not going to pull any punches with those words. They are going to be confrontational, but they're words. That's why so many times in Facebook and on X, particularly on X, you'll be spanked for using words in a nonviolent way, intelligently wielding words, making logical connections and comparisons. And, we just need to realize that words are important. And God is saying that this individual, he is going to land all of his blows against everything that's wrong in the material realm using words. And then we have another reference to Ruach. And with the Ruach, the spirit of his lips and resulting language, he will devastate the wicked and the wrong. So there's actually an 8th Ruach here. And 7, of course, is the number of Yahowah. Actually a perfection. 1 is the number for Yahowah. 6 is the number for man. 7 is Yahowah plus man together is God's idea of the perfect result. But God uses 8 throughout his testimony. There's an 8th day of Sukkah, for example. 8 speaks of eternity. And so these words are everlasting words. And there is this 8th Ruach here in the text. And it is the Ruach of language, of spoken words, of God using this choder as he used Moshe. When Moshe said, I don't speak anyone, to Yahweh. Not making fun of you, Moshe. Trust me on this. I know it's a tough job. But Moshe tried to say, I don't speak very well. My tongue is too thick in my mouth. And God turned to Moshe. This is why I say, just don't argue. If God asks you to do something, Just do what he asks you to do. Arguing with God, you're going to lose. And I know I've tried, by the way. I've my last argument with God was I don't want to rewrite Prophet of Doom. It was a terrible experience, and yeah, boy, did I ever got shut down in a hurry. I have taken care of you. Now you take care of my people. Was his response. You know, if when you're arguing with God, you're just going to lose. My advice is don't do it. Anyway, Moshe was laying that up, and so what God's retort back was, "Who do you think made your mouth? And since I made it, don't you think I know how to use it?" And so Debadim is Yahweh using Moshe's mouth. The choder here is we're being told that the Spirit of Yahweh is controlling his lips. You're witnessing the fulfillment of this prophecy. And he's not saying that the Spirit of Yahweh is going to be, again, sweet and loving and meek. He's going to just love everybody. No, it says he's going to devastate the wicked and the wrong. He is going to attack the religious. His words are going to be caustic. His words are going to destroy. He even uses the word for muth. Have you heard the word muth in Hebrew? You know what muth means? To kill. He is going to kill the religious. Yeah, might as well. I mean, Yahweh delegates everything. And if you're religious, the best hope you have. This is actually good news for you if you're religious, because the best thing that could possibly happen to you if you're Rasha, religious, is to be killed. Because you can't have a relationship with Yahweh, so you can't live forever with him. And so the only other option for you is to spend eternity in hell. You want to be killed by the choder's words so that you don't go to hell. But yes, it's the Spirit of Yahweh here on the lips of the choder is to devastate, destroy, and yes, kill the religious with words. Now, there is a time, I will tell you, where now the choder's words through goddamn religion, 5 volumes, through the 5 volumes of Twistianity, through the 3 volumes of Babel, definitely kill the myth of a Jesus Christ or of a Paul writing an inspired text of the Talmud and of Rabbi Akiba and Maimonides and of Ezekiel actually being a prophet and of Allah being a god and Muhammad being a prophet as well. They are exceedingly deadly to those religions. They completely kill the myth of Muhammad, Allah, Jesus Christ, the Lord, Hashem. It is absolutely true. And that is a very important thing to recognize, that it is what Yahweh wants done. He wants religion devastated. And part of the reason for that is that his son fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim. And it is these religions that have piled their trash right on top of that, so that the truth is hard to see. So you have to destroy the religious texts for you to have any appreciation of what God has done. The first condition of the covenant is to walk away from Babel, which is this integration between religion and politics to confound and to confuse. And so that's his job.
Boy, do people have a hard time walking away.
Though they ever. You know, there's a reason that God said their first job together is going to be expose and condemn Islam.
Yep.
And shortly thereafter, we wrote the books to expose and condemn Christianity. Until you know what's wrong, you're not in a position to know what's right. God didn't reach out to Abraham until Abraham and Sarah had left Babylon. So that's the truth. He didn't reach out to Moshe until he had left Mitzrayim, Egypt either, didn't he? They didn't reach out to me until I had walked away from religion and politics too, and I was very involved in both of them. But I had rejected both. So God is not here to be the God of religion and politics. He wants his spirit to work through his children to ravage them, to destroy them, to kill all religious myths. God wants to damn Jesus. He wants to damn Allah. Yahweh, as God, wants me to kill Allah and Jesus. That's a pretty tough thing to say, but that is absolutely true. And by the way, kill Hashem while you're at it. And the Talmud, the New Testament, and the Quran. Obliterate them, kill them, destroy them.
They all got to go.
They all have to go. And it is the best thing that you could possibly happen, because for those who have been the biggest advocates of these plagues, they aren't going to have that luxury. They are not going to die. They're going to spend their eternity in Sheol. And so the best thing you could ever hope for is for God's work through the Towrah to kill you, so that your soul doesn't endure an eternity in Sheol. But with this Towrah, one of the things I wanted to say is that he is one of the two witnesses along with Elia. And when Elia and I return, our words will be deadly. If you have come to do what so many have tried to do, to denounce Yahweh, to promote Jesus or Allah or Muhammad or the Torahless one at that point, Donald Trump, if you come to advocate on behalf of Marxism or MAGAs, our words are going to incinerate you. Literally kill you. So you may want to think that one through as well. That's Yeshayah, Isaiah 11:4. It says, being right, correct, and honest will be the belt around his waist. Will gird him. Will clothe him. Will adorn him. You know, the Yeshayah, the most prolific of the prophets, speaks of this man from Edom. Now, the man from Edom and the Nakar, the observant foreigner, are obviously one and the same as the Towrah as well. And he says that this man from Edom is dressed appropriately and that he will save many. And this is Yeshayah saying the reason he's dressed appropriately is he's girded around his waist with trustworthiness, with being a restoring and reliable witness, emunah, with integrity and dependability, such that his testimony is real, it's genuine, it's steadfast, it's truthful, it's honest, it's valid. All of this is from Aman, which is to support that which is trustworthy and reliable. All of you nitwits out there that say amen after a prayer, amen is the name of an Egyptian god. Aman is the word. The word means to be trustworthy, to be reliable, to be true, to be valid. And when you're speaking religious nonsense and praying to a god, you're spewing nonsense, so you might as well be praying in the name of the Egyptian god. In the name of God, amen. You're right there. You got that part right. It's just that it's dead ass wrong. So the trustworthy and reliable nature of his witness is how this man, the Towrah, is girded. By the way, stems don't dress. So he was still talking about a man, masculine singular, all the way through here. He is a reliable witness. And it will be the band that is girding him. It's the belt around his manhood. It makes him such that he is invigorated and productive. So this is what Yahweh had to say. This is Yeshayah 11:5, and we're just beginning this analysis of this person that Yahweh said was going to be the one who excoriates religion killing it. Well, you need to know who this individual is as we then tear the Christian New Testament to shreds. You'll understand why we're doing it together. So I want to thank you for listening. It's been an interesting episode of the YAHOWAH blog here in the Rainbow Studio. We're looking forward to being with you next time as we do another program from the Rainbow Studio. And I am the Choder, your host, Craig Winn.